Marker?
Ow!
Yeah.
Just to scare you. You still got it.
At 99, Mel Brooks names the 5 actors he hated the most. Mel Brooks, born Melvin Kaminsky on June 28, 1926, in Brooklyn, New York, is an American comedian, actor, writer, producer, and director celebrated for his sharp wit and fearless satire. Rising from a background in stand-up and television writing, Brooks became a Hollywood legend with films like The Producers, Blazing Saddles, and Young Frankenstein, blending slapstick humor with clever social commentary. He is one of the few entertainers to achieve the rare EGOT status, winning an Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony Award. Brooks's groundbreaking work continues to influence comedy, proving that laughter can be both intelligent and timeless. Over his 60-year career, from Blazing Saddles to Young Frankenstein, Brooks cultivated comedy through disciplined chaos. Actors were meant to be parts of a finely tuned machine. Those who disrupted rhythm were replaced. Mel Brooks replaces Frank Langella, known for his impeccable comedic timing and ability to blend absurdity with sharp wit. Mel Brooks had a clear vision for every project he directed. That vision clashed spectacularly with actor Frank Langella when Brooks began developing his 1995 horror comedy Dracula, Dead and Loving It. Initially, Langella seemed like an intriguing choice, a classically trained actor with prior experience playing the iconic vampire on stage and screen. However, what Brooks imagined as a playful parody quickly became, in his words, a graveyard of laughs due to Langella's approach. Brooks wanted the humor to flow through every scene, even in moments of gothic drama. His direction called for a self-aware performance that embraced the ridiculous while maintaining just enough seriousness to make the comedy land. But Langella's style was the opposite: stern, serious, and rooted in the dramatic gravitas of Shakespearean theater, instead of the sly, exaggerated Dracula Brooks envisioned. Langella delivered lines with the solemnity of a tragic hero, draining the comedic energy from the set. According to crew members, Brooks tried multiple times to guide Langella toward a lighter tone, offering adjustments, improvisational exercises, and examples from past parodies. But Langella held firm, insisting that Dracula's mystique depended on unwavering seriousness. What worked in a straight horror adaptation was, in Brooks's comedic framework, like throwing a wet blanket on a punchline, the tension quietly reached a breaking point. Without a public announcement or dramatic confrontation, Brooks made the decision to replace Langella. The role went to Leslie Nielsen, whose background in parody films like Airplane and The Naked Gun made him a perfect fit for the absurdist humor Brooks was aiming for. Nielsen's playful deadpan and impeccable timing instantly elevated the tone, transforming the film into the over-the-top comedy Brooks had envisioned from the start. In later interviews, Brooks never spoke with malice about Langella, but he did hint at the fundamental mismatch. "Frank's a wonderful actor," he admitted, "just not my kind of Dracula." For Brooks, comedy was about rhythm, flexibility, and a willingness to play with the material, qualities he simply didn't see in Langella's performance during the shoot. The episode became a reminder of one of Brooks's guiding principles. Casting isn't just about talent, but about compatibility with the style and spirit of the project. In the case of Dracula, Dead and Loving It, that meant replacing a respected dramatic actor with a comedic specialist to protect the heart and pace of the humor. Mel Brooks, Gene Wilder fallout. After decades of creating comedy gold together in films like Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, and The Producers, Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder had built one of the most celebrated partnerships in comedy history. That's why the troubles that arose during the early stages of Dracula. Dead and loving. It came as such a shock. Initially, Brooks envisioned Wilder in the title role, thinking his combination of charm, eccentricity, and comedic timing would bring the perfect balance of absurdity and gothic parody to the film. However, once rehearsals began, Brooks realized something was off. Instead of the whimsical unpredictability that had defined Wilder's past performances, his approach to Dracula was overly serious and stiff. Brooks had designed the film to poke fun at the vampire genre, with jokes landing in rapid-fire rhythm. But Wilder's delivery was slow, measured, and almost statuesque, draining energy from scenes that were meant to be lively and ridiculous. Brooks reportedly tried multiple times to steer Wilder toward a looser, more self-aware portrayal. He offered adjustments to line readings, encouraged improvisation, and even referenced their earlier collaborations as examples of how to balance seriousness with comedic absurdity. Yet Wilder held firm, leaning into a gravitas he felt the character required. In Brooks's mind, it was like casting a marble statue to do a tap dance, technically elegant, but incapable of hitting the comedic beats. The creative disconnect soon became unbridgeable, without public fanfare or open confrontation. Brooks made the difficult decision to quietly replace Wilder. The role ultimately went to Leslie Nielsen, whose deadpan mastery and parody credentials from Airplane and The Naked Gun perfectly matched the film's tone. Nielsen embraced the ridiculousness Brooks wanted, restoring the snappy pace and comedic energy the director felt had been missing. In later interviews, Brooks was careful not to vilify Wilder, expressing respect for his talent but acknowledging that their visions for Dracula were simply incompatible. "Gene's a genius," Brooks admitted, "but not for this Dracula." Their professional split over the project marked a bittersweet turn in one of comedy's great creative partnerships. For Brooks, the experience underscored a truth he had learned many times before. Great comedy depends not just on talent, but on alignment of style, rhythm, and creative intent. In the case of Dracula, Dead and Loving It, even a longtime friend and collaborator couldn't make the role work when the comedic heartbeat of the character demanded something entirely different. Mel Brooks shunned Chevy Chase. After decades of working with some of the most talented comedic actors in the business, Mel Brooks had a sharp instinct for knowing who would fit his style and who wouldn't. This instinct came into play when the name Chevy Chase was floated for a role in Brooks's 1987 sci-fi parody Spaceballs. On paper, Chase seemed like an obvious choice. A major comedy star from Saturday Night Live and hit films like Caddyshack and Fletch. But Brooks shut down the idea almost immediately. For Brooks, the problem wasn't Chase's comedic ability. He recognized that Chase was undeniably talented, but his reputation for having an outsized ego. Brooks had heard from multiple collaborators that Chase had a habit of trying to be the smartest person in the room, often undermining the natural chemistry of an ensemble cast. In Brooks's brand of comedy, timing and teamwork were everything. His films relied on actors who could play off each other, share the spotlight, and prioritize the joke over personal glory. Brooks feared that Chase's tendency to dominate scenes would disrupt this balance. Instead of contributing to the group rhythm, he worried Chase would try to bend it around himself. This clashed with Brooks's philosophy that the best comedy comes from generosity, from actors giving each other space to shine rather than competing for the biggest laugh. Reports from other sets reinforced Brooks's concerns. Chase was known for ad-libbing lines to draw attention to himself, even if it meant stepping over another actor's moment. While this might have worked in projects built entirely around him, Spaceballs was an ensemble piece, and Brooks needed players who could serve the comedy as a whole. Ultimately, Brooks passed on Chase and pursued actors he felt would mesh better with the group dynamic, like Bill Pullman and Rick Moranis. The result was a film where the humor came from interplay, not one-upmanship. In later conversations, Brooks never publicly trashed Chase, but he made it clear that his decision was rooted in protecting the collaborative spirit of his set. "I need actors who listen," Brooks once said. "Comedy is a duet, not a monologue." For him, Chase's style simply didn't fit the kind of harmony he needed to make Spaceballs work. Mel Brooks ends Harvey Korman partnership. Mel Brooks and Harvey Korman had shared some of the brightest moments in comedy cinema. Their partnership in Blazing Saddles, 1974, and History of the World, Part 1, 1981, produced performances that perfectly balanced Brooks's sharp parody writing with Korman's theatrical charisma. On screen, Korman could be pompous, sly, and self-aware, exactly what Brooks needed to bring his absurd worlds to life. Off-screen, their mutual respect made the collaboration seem like a natural fit. That harmony began to falter during the production of High Anxiety, 1977, Brooks's parody of Alfred Hitchcock thrillers. Unlike some of his other films, High Anxiety was built on a very tight comedic structure. Brooks had carefully crafted the timing, camera work, and dialogue to mimic the precision of Hitchcock's style while layering in jokes. The script was designed so that every line and beat served both the parody and the pacing. Korman, however, thrived on improvisation. His comedic instincts pushed him to experiment with ad-libs, pauses, and exaggerated reactions, techniques that had worked brilliantly in Blazing Saddles, where the looseness of the Western spoof left room for play. But in High Anxiety, this looser approach clashed with Brooks's vision. Scenes that needed razor-sharp timing to land the parody began to lose rhythm when Korman deviated from the plan. At first, Brooks tried to adapt, giving Korman space to explore while still nudging him back toward the structure. But tensions grew as takes were extended. Setups had to be redone, and Brooks felt his directorial control slipping. Crew members recalled moments when Brooks would stop a scene mid-take, frustrated that Korman was directing with his performance, altering not just his own lines, but the pace and focus of the entire scene. Brooks began to feel that Korman wasn't just acting. He was, intentionally or not, trying to shape the film's direction from in front of the camera. For a director like Brooks, whose comedies relied on a carefully orchestrated balance between chaos and control, this was unacceptable. The creative friction began to overshadow the camaraderie they once had. By the end of filming, the two were still professional, but the ease of their earlier collaborations was gone. Brooks decided that High Anxiety would be their last major project together. While he never publicly attacked Korman, Brooks later admitted that their working styles had become too far apart to meet in the middle. In retrospect, their split was less about personal dislike and more about a clash of methods. Brooks needed precision. Korman thrived on spontaneity. In Blazing Saddles, those qualities complemented each other. In High Anxiety, they collided. And for Mel Brooks, maintaining control of the comedic blueprint was worth ending even one of his most fruitful creative partnerships. Mel Brooks rejected Jerry Lewis. Mel Brooks had spent his career working with some of the biggest personalities in comedy, but he was always careful to choose collaborators whose style matched his vision. When Jerry Lewis, one of the most famous and influential comedians of the 20th century, was suggested for a role in Brooks's 1991 film Life Stinks, It seemed at first like a pairing that could make headlines. Brooks respected Lewis's groundbreaking work in physical comedy and filmmaking, but his instincts told him the partnership would be a poor fit. Brooks's hesitation came down to personality and approach. He had heard stories and witnessed in public appearances that Lewis could be arrogant, with a tendency to dominate the spotlight in any situation. For Life Stinks, a satirical comedy about a wealthy tycoon forced to live on the streets, Brooks needed an ensemble-driven dynamic, where the humor came from the story and the interactions between characters. He feared that Lewis's need to stand out might overshadow the tone of the film and disrupt its balance. That concern only deepened when the two met for dinner to discuss the possibility. Brooks reportedly entered the meeting open-minded, ready to see if their comedic sensibilities could align. But over the course of the evening, Lewis largely steered the conversation toward his own achievements, recounting in detail his career triumphs and the ways he had revolutionized comedy. While Brooks appreciated his legacy, he found the lack of a curiosity or collaborative spirit-telling. For Brooks, comedy was a team sport. He thrived on actors who could play off each other, share the scene, and let the story breathe. In Lewis, he saw a performer who, for all his talent, was more interested in being the centerpiece than in serving the bigger picture. That quality, Brooks felt, could turn Life Stinks into a Jerry Lewis vehicle rather than the ensemble satire he envisioned. Ultimately, Brooks decided to pass on the idea of working together. The decision wasn't born of personal animosity. Brooks continued to acknowledge Lewis as a giant of comedy, but of a clear recognition that their styles and priorities were incompatible. Jerry was brilliant, Brooks would later say, but he wasn't the right fit for me. The episode served as another example of Brooks's guiding principle, that casting is about more than talent. It's about chemistry, humility, and the willingness to serve the story above one's own ego. And for Brooks, that was non-negotiable. Mel Brooks' enduring legacy, following a career marked by sharp instincts, fearless satire, and an unwavering commitment to comedic craft. Mel Brooks leaves behind a legacy that spans generations and genres. As a writer, director, actor, and producer, Brooks redefined what cinematic comedy could be, blending slapstick absurdity with biting social commentary in a way few have matched. From the outrageous political humor of The Producers to the genre-bending brilliance of Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein, his work consistently pushed boundaries while remaining accessible to wide audiences. Brooks's genius lay in his ability to merge chaos with precision. His films often appeared anarchic on the surface, yet every joke was meticulously timed, every visual gag choreographed with care. He was unafraid to mock authority, tradition, or even the very medium he was working in. But his satire was rarely mean-spirited. It came from a place of joy and a deep love for entertainment. His influence is evident in generations of comedians and filmmakers who followed, from the parody style of the Zucker-Abraham-Zucker team to the self-aware humor of modern TV comedies. Brooks also proved that comedy could be both commercially successful and artistically daring, winning him an Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony Award, the coveted EGOT, beyond awards and box office numbers. Brooks's greatest legacy may be the way he expanded the possibilities of laughter itself. He showed that comedy could challenge norms, address uncomfortable truths, and still leave audiences roaring with delight. His work remains a touchstone for anyone seeking to understand the art of making people laugh, not just in the moment, but for decades to come. Lessons from the life of Mel Brooks. Building on the legacy Mel Brooks leaves behind, His life offers powerful lessons for anyone pursuing creativity, leadership, or simply a meaningful life. Perhaps the most striking is his unwavering belief in authenticity. Brooks never tried to mold himself to fit trends or studio expectations. He trusted his voice, even when it meant taking risks that others considered career suicide. From Blazing Saddles to The Producers, he proved that daring to push boundaries, if done with purpose and skill, can lead to groundbreaking art. Another key takeaway is the importance of resilience. Brooks faced criticism, box office flops, and creative clashes, yet he refused to let setbacks define him. He adapted without losing his core identity, showing that longevity in any field comes from the ability to evolve while staying true to one's values. His collaborative spirit is equally instructive. Despite his undeniable talent, Brooks understood that great comedy often comes from ensemble dynamics. He surrounded himself with people who could challenge him, elevate his work, and share in the joy of creation. Finally, Brooks' career teaches that humor is not frivolous. It is a force for connection, healing, and truth-telling. By blending laughter with insight, he showed that comedy can dismantle prejudice, question authority, and make life's harsh realities a little more bearable. In short, Mel Brooks' story is a reminder that boldness, resilience, collaboration, and a sense of humor are not just artistic virtues, they are life virtues. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories and insights